Okay, this recording is my lecture on chapter 4. Chapter 4 is entitled The Market Forces of Supply and Demand. Okay, so let me market forces of supply and demand. All right, so what we learned up to now is that we learned about consumer theory. In consumer theory, we are able to use the idea of happiness and the fact that we have a budget and use those ideas together to develop and construct a demand curve. We said the demand curve of a specific product lives in the following two-dimensional space. Where we have the product, let's call this beers. The amount of products that are being purchased is measured on the x-axis, and the y-axis, we measure the price of each beer or the unit price. In this two-dimensional space, we are able to use the theory, consumer theory, to develop this downward sloping line that we call the demand for beer. In the last couple of weeks, we learned about perfect competition, and we learned about the supply curve. The supply curve for a specific product is upward sloping in the short run. And this upward sloping line is the supply curve. And this here, where we have the demand curve and the supply curve, we call this the market for a specific product or service, in this case, beer. Okay, this is our picture, our graphical representation for the market of beer. We have a demand curve, we have a supply curve. We're going to eventually learn when they cross right here. This is called the equilibrium. We're going to learn soon that this price here, PB star, is the equilibrium price. QB star is the equilibrium quantity. That's basically the goal of this chapter, is to figure out how do we get P star, how do we get Q star, why is that equilibrium, and why is that very efficient. Okay, all right. So the first thing we're going to do is clear this and talk real briefly about what a market is. Kind of went over this already. Let's go market. Okay, market. A market for a good or service is basically a group of buyers and sellers for this good or service X. Okay, that's what a market is. It's a bunch of people who want to buy X and a bunch of people who want to sell X, all put together. Okay, think of the swap meet. The buyers of these of X is called the demanders, and the sellers are called the suppliers. Okay, so we have the demanders that demand or buy this product, and we have the suppliers who sell these products. Okay, so again, as I stated before, a graphical representation is the following. Of the market, and we have the quantity of some good. Okay, let's call this beer, and the unit price of beer. We are going to live in this two-dimensional world, and this is the market for beer. Okay, all right. at bottom of the notes of chapter of this bottom of the notes on page 2, it basically goes into the types of markets. We are basically going to be playing in the world of perfect competition that we learned about in the previous chapter. There's other types of markets out there called monopoly, monopolistic competition, oligopoly. We're not going to be playing in those worlds. We're going to adopt the theories and the ideas of perfect competition. We'll talk about those other worlds later when we learn about them. Okay. So now what we're going to do is talk about the demand for this product. Okay. A lot of this might be review of what we learned in the chapter regarding consumer theory. Okay. Demand. Okay. All right. Demand. Demand is basically shorthand or shortened for demand curve. Now, this is different than quantity demanded. Quantity demanded is the amount of a good that buyers are willing and able to purchase for a given price on a specific demand curve. I'll get to what that means. Law of demand. What is law of demand? I think we learned this before. All things equal, when the price of some good goes up, you want to buy less. When the price falls, you want to buy more. Okay, law of demand. All right, so what is all this? Okay, so we're going to draw here. It's quantity of beers, price of beers, and this, we'll call this the market for beers. So the law of demand basically says the demand curve is downward sloping. Here's demand or the demand curve, okay? And the demand curve, okay, provides quantity demanded, okay? So at point A, at this given price of beer is $3 a can. The market wants 100 cans. 100, this is an example of quantity demanded. Okay, this is the quantity demanded when the price of beers is 3 given this demand curve. Okay, another one, B, when the price, I don't know, 3, it's higher than 3, is $4 a can. This market, LA maybe, wants 80 cans of beers. Okay, and we could see as the price goes up for each can, quantity demanded falls. If the price goes down, quantity demanded increases. That's the law of demand. Everything else held equal. Basically, the demand curve is downward sloping, which means price goes up, people want to buy less, price goes down, people want to buy more. Okay. Now, these are quantity demanded right here. Okay. Here's another demand curve. Maybe this is Orange County or something. Here's another demand. And let's say OC, and this is LA. In OC, we have a point C at price of, it's between 3 and 4, $3.50 a can. In Orange County, people want to drink 150 cans of beer. But you could see at $3.50 a can, in LA, people want to drink only 90, whatever, between 80 and 100, looks like right in the middle, 90 cans of beer. So we could see all these numbers are different quantity demanded. They're tied to a specific demand curve and tied to a specific price. Okay, so remember, quantity demanded is different than demand. Okay, let's move on. The demand curve. If the demand curve is a straight line, like this, okay, for example, then the formula for a linear demand curve is the following. It's the price of some good, okay, let's call it beer, is equal to minus M quantity demanded for beer plus B, where this is the slope and this is the y intercept, okay? So this quantity of beer, price of beers. We have a demand curve like this in this market for beers. This right here, where the y-intercept, that is B, the slope, M is the slope, and it shows you the rise over run, right? Obviously, this is negative, I'm sorry. So it's negative. And so for every M unit fall, that is in price, we have 1 unit increase in the quantity of beer, right? Because M over 1 is equal to M, right? So every M unit fall in the price of beer, that is related to 1 unit increase in the price of beer. Or if every 1 unit decrease in the quantity of beers, you have an M increase in the price. Okay, that's what, remember what the slope tells us. It shows us the relationship between unit price and the amount being purchased. Okay. We'll quickly talk about a Giffen good. We talked about this before in a previous chapter. So a lot of this is review. A Giffen good. It's a good or service that violates the law of demand. And again, this means that the law of demand for a Giffen good for a Giffen good, we have an increased demand curve. It's price of beers, quantity of beers. And we have a positively sloped demand curve, I'm sorry, where price of goes up, they want to buy more beers. If we see this type of activity, then we have a Giffen good. All right. Next, we're going to talk about individual demand and the market demand. Basically, how do we get these market demand curves from the individual demand curves? So we're going to talk about that quickly. I'm going to clear this. All right, so let's do this. So I'm going to just draw 2 people because of the limited space. So we have like Bob, I have Larry, and they're the only 2 people who buy beers in whatever LA County. Okay. We have the price of beers. We have, and I'm going to use little q, saying it's Bob's because it's individual. Price of beer, little q for let's say Larry. Price of beers, and Bob and Larry consists of everybody in the market. So I'm going to put big Q for the market for beer. Okay. All right. So Bob has a specific demand curve given his preferences, and it looks like this. Larry, he has a different way, different preferences. He grew up differently. And so his demand curve looks like this. All right. So from here, how do we get the market demand? We add across for different prices. What does that mean? We add how much each of the people want to consume given a specific price. So for example, at a price of $10 a can, $10 a can, $10 a can, Bob wants to buy, I don't know, like 3 cans of beer. Larry, oh, he's not drinking any beer. So in the market, at the price of $10 a can, we have 3 beers that are demanded. Quantity demanded is 3. So we will have a point A right there. At another price, I don't know. At $7 a can, Bob wants, it looks like about 5 beers. Larry wants, I don't know, that looks about 5 beers. And then so at $7 a can, Larry, he's buying beers now, not only Bob. We have about 5 from Bob, 5 from Larry. That's 10. Around there, 10. So we have point B. And we do this again. Let me do a third one. So 7, 10, I don't know, about $5 a can. Bob wants to have like 7 beers. Oh, Larry drinks a lot of beers. Larry's going to drink 5, 10, 15, about like 17 beers, maybe. And then so at $5 a can, Larry's going to buy 17. Bob's going to buy 7. So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. There's going to be 24 beers that is wanted in this marketplace. We could do that for other prices. We could get point D, point E, point F. And then when you connect these dots, we have the market demand curve for beer. And that's how demand curves are generally created. We try to figure out everybody in the marketplace. Okay. In an ideal world, we would know everybody in the marketplace. And we would add across for every price. How many does Bob wants to drink? How many does Larry? How many does Jennifer and Tiffany and Frank? And we add across, and that's how you do a demand curve. And that's how basically demand curves are created by, or wanted to be created. I don't know if they have it because I don't work for them, but Amazon, Target, Vons, they all try to create these demand curves, or at least estimate. Okay, so we're done with this. Now we're going to go into comparative statics, and we're going to see what can impact the demand curve. Specifically, what can make the demand curve shift to the left or right? So I'm going to clear this. Okay. Then we have the demand market. Let's say market demand for beer. We have a price of beer. We have quantity of beer. We have the market demand curve like this. All right. So here, this demand curve, I don't know if you remember this, is drawn assuming everything else in the world is held fixed at a specific number. The number of kids each person have, the number of hot dogs they're eating, the number of wives they have, whatever. All of that is fixed at a specific number. And then we draw this demand curve that shows you the relationship of the unit price of beers and the quantity of beers. Okay. So when one of these things outside of the world of price, unit price, and quantity changes, that can make the demand curve shift. And what I mean by that is it can make the demand curve shift to the right. Okay. Which means that for any given price, okay, quantity demanded has increased. For any given price, quantity demanded has increased. So shift to right means demand increase given price. Okay. And the opposite day is true. Shift to left means demand decrease given price. Okay. So when we say increase in demand, we're saying the demand curve shifts to the right. When we say a decrease in demand, we're saying the demand curve shifts to the left given prices. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is talk about what can shift this demand curves. And before we get into that, we have also something called movement along the demand curve. All right, so let's get into that. I'm going to clear this. So quantity and price, here's the demand curve. And remember what the demand curve is. It shows us the relationship of price, because price is on the y-axis. We're going to call that the quote-unquote dependent variable, though, which is independent, which is dependent is not really important in these demand curve. It's just that price is equal to, and then we have minus m quantity demanded plus b, where b is the y-intercept, m is the slope, and price is the y-axis variable, qd is the x-axis variable. All right. Here, this formula shows you the relationship between price and quantity demanded. So if price increases, we could see quantity demanded falls. If price falls, quantity demanded increases. Quantity demanded falls, price increases, so on and so on. This provides the relationship, this curve, formula and curve, they're the same thing, provides a relationship between the unit price and quantity. Okay? So if we're at point A, and we know the price is $5 a beer, and people want to drink 100 beers, and the price falls to like $3 a beer, we could use the formula, or we could use the curve to figure out exactly what the quantity demanded is. Let's say it's 130, whatever, okay? We can use this curve to move up and down this demand curve to figure out the other variable. We know that quantity demanded changes from, say, 130 to 100. We could use this curve or the formula to figure out exactly how much price changed, okay? That's called movement along the curve. We're going to move along, quote unquote, move along the demand curve in this case to figure out y when x changes, or x when y changes. Okay. Okay, so that's a movement along the curve. But now what we're going to do is go over the variables that can shift the demand curve. Okay, so let's go through this. All right, the first one, okay, variables that shift. The first one is change in income. Okay, so we have some product, quantity of beers, price of beers. Here's the demand curve. When income increases, the demand curve can shift to the right or it can shift to the left. Let's say for beers, the demand curve shifts to the right. What that means is for any given price, quantity demanded has increased, right? For any given price, quantity demanded has increased, okay? So we have an increase in demand. Let me rewrite this. And what that means is for any given price, quantity demanded increased. Okay. So if we see an increase in M causes demand to increase, we call this a normal good. Okay. And that should make sense. Um, you win the lotto. You have an increase in income. You want to buy more Ferraris. Your demand for Ferraris should increase. Okay. So that's an example of a normal good. Now, we talked about ghetto or inferior goods. Here's quantity of instant ramen. Here's the price of instant ramen. And here's the demand curve for instant ramen. Okay, so this is the market for instant ramen. And if we see, say, income goes up and demand curve shifts this way, demand falls, that means we have an inferior good. These are ghetto goods. Okay, you make more money, you won the lottery, your demand for instant ramen collapses. Okay, you want to buy more Ferraris and fancy steaks and stuff. Okay. All right, so we did income, and we found out when income increases, it can cause demand to increase, or it can cause demand to decrease. If it causes demand to increase, we have a normal good. If it causes demand to decrease, we have an inferior good. All right, next we're going to talk about prices of related good. Okay. Change in the price of related goods. Okay. So let's talk about something. Let's suppose the price of Coca-Cola increases. What should happen is if the price of Coca-Cola increases, the demand, not quantity demand, the demand for Pepsi increases. Price of Coke increases. Cokes are more expensive. You want to buy more Pepsi. Let's suppose that you like eating hamburgers with Coke. If the price of Coke increases, Coke becomes more expensive. You like to eat hamburgers with Coke, not Pepsi, but Coke. Then, because you're buying less Coke, you're going to buy less hamburgers. Oh, I don't know how to spell hamburger. Hamburgers. Fall. Okay. If we see the price of one good increase and the demand for another good increase, we have we have substitute goods. If a price of one good increases and the demand for another good decrease, we have complement goods. Okay. All right. Let me explain this to you guys. Okay, so let's do substitutes first. So let's say the price of Coke increases. Okay, then we could draw what happens to the Coke market. This is the market for Coke. Here's the price of Coke, quantity of Coke, and remember we have this demand curve for Coke. So what happened is we're at point A, some equilibrium, where this was the price And this was the quantity of Cokes drank. Okay. And then what happened was price of Coke increased to say PC double star. When that happens, we move along the demand curve for Coke and we get to point B, QC double star. And we find that when the price of Coke increases, quantity demanded of Coke falls. The amount of Coke we purchases fall. Okay. This has repercussions. Specifically, it has repercussions in the Pepsi market. Okay. So here's the Pepsi market. Here's quantity of Pepsi, price of Pepsi, market for Pepsi. This was the demand curve for Pepsi. Okay. We're at, I don't know, point A. This is the price of Pepsi star, quantity of Pepsi that we're drinking. And then the price of Coke increased. People start buying less Coke. Well, they got to drink something. So they end up buying more Pepsi. Okay. And it doesn't matter where the price was. Suppose the price of Pepsi was here. Suppose the price of Pepsi was there. We're just going to buy more Pepsi. And that's how we get a new demand curve for Pepsi. Okay. Like that. The demand, wherever the price was, it's going to shift to the right, meaning they're going to drink more Pepsi regardless of the price. Okay. So when the price of Coke increases, they drink less Coke, and that causes demand for a a substitute good called Pepsi to go up. Okay. Could be water, could be coffee, whatever, but I chose Pepsi. So that's how it works. Let's do the complement good. Oh, geez. All right. Price of Coke increases. We see from here that quantity demanded of Coke fell. Okay. We saw that from this picture right here. All right. But this has repercussions on other marketplace. For example, the market for a complement good. Hamburgers. Hamburger. Here's quantity of hamburger, price of hamburger. Here's the demand curve for hamburger. And let's suppose the price of hamburger was right here, price of hamburger star. And this is how many hamburgers that people were eating. We're at point A. Okay. We eat hamburgers with Coke. And as we buy less Coke, we're going to buy less hamburgers because that's the only way we enjoy hamburgers. Okay. So we're going to buy, I don't know, maybe point B. We're going to buy less hamburgers. Fine. And guess what? Whatever the price is, we're just going to buy less hamburgers. So the demand curve shifts to the left. Okay. Which means that the demand for hamburgers falls. Okay. Okay. So we figured out what happens when the price of a related good changes, how that can impact the consumption, like demand for Pepsi or substitute, and a demand for a hamburger, a complement. All right, let's move on and let's talk about something else that could influence the demand curve, and that's tastes. Okay, so let's go to tastes and trends. taste and trends. Okay. So when we draw these demand curves, okay, for a product, we assumed the trend or taste or whatever Cosmopolitan says or whatever Kim Kardashian says as fixed in stone. If Cosmopolitan says something else, oh, wearing Z Cabaricis is cool or something like that, the demand for Z Cabaricis will increase. All right, so let's do this. Let's suppose we're talking about Ray-Bans. Ray-Ban Wayfarers. Wayfarers? I don't know. Plastic Ray-Bans, okay? This is the demand curve in the I don't know when it came out, but let's just say it came out in 1970s. Okay. And then what happened was in the mid 80s or so, some famous actor started, wore these Ray-Ban Wayfarers and started dancing around in his underwear. And this movie is called Risky Business, if you didn't know. And everybody wanted Wayfarers. Everybody and their grandmother wanted to buy Wayfarers. So the demand curve, let's say 1980s, shifted to the right. There was an increase in demand for Wayfarers because Tom Cruise in Risky Business did his little dance in his underwear. So everybody and their grandmother wants Wayfarers. And then in, I don't know, early 90s or something, Tom Cruise, came out with the movie Top Gun, and he didn't wear Wayfarers, he wore aviators. So everybody and their grandmothers are like, yeah, no, I don't want Wayfarers anymore. I want aviators. So the demand for Wayfarers went down. Then I heard like 10 or 5 years ago, before COVID, Wayfarers became cool again. I don't know, maybe Kim Kardashian or I don't know, Cosmopolitan says, hey, Wayfarers are cool. So the demand for Wayfarers, 2010s, whatever, increase. Okay. So as tastes change, okay, things become cooler. Demand increases. Things become uncool. Demand decreases. Things cool. Demand increases. Things become uncool. Demand decreases. Okay. That's how taste trends can impact or influence demand for products. All right, let's do the next one. Expectations. And the expectations we're going to learn about here are two things, and that's two things only, because that's what the book covers and my notes. And that's about change in income, where I use M in the future. Should learn how to spell future. And change in price of the good in, I use P in the future. Okay, so let's do the first one, change in income. Okay, all right. This, hopefully all of this makes sense to you. Most of economics is just logic, and hopefully all of this just kind of like duh. All right. Your boss tells you you're going to get a raise, but it's not going to take effect until the next paycheck, which is like, I don't know, a month from now. So you're going to get whatever, a 10% raise. That's going to happen a month from now. What do most of you guys do, or what do we do? Most people do. They go home, they see their significant other. Honey, I got a raise. Let's go celebrate. Let's go eat a fancy dinner. Well, you didn't have more income today. It's going to come from a month from now. But you decide to buy more stuff today. Okay. So when income, we expect income to go up in future. Today's demand for normal goods increase. And today's demand for inferior goods fall. Okay. So here's like steak dinner. Is the demand curve, price of steak dinner, quantity of steak dinner. You or your family or whoever got a raise, or you expect to get like I don't know, your grandma died, you expect to get some money. So what do? You want more steak dinner. Normal goods go up. Okay. Here is a instant mac and cheese or frozen food or whatever. Here's the price of mac and cheese, quantity of Kraft's macaroni and cheese. Here's the demand curve. And you won the lottery. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I just won $10 million lottery. It's all good. I don't need any more instant mac and cheese, right? Same thing. We just talked about, I just said the lottery. You won the lottery. You're about to get a paycheck of $50 million 2 months from now. What do you do today? You go to the Ferrari dealer, you get the red one, the pink one, the black one, and the purple one. You just max out your credit card. You're going to the fanciest steakhouse, you're just maxing out your credit card. You expect income to go up in the future. Normal goods increase today. You buy more normal goods today, and you buy less inferior goods today. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Now let's talk about the next one. Okay. Change in future prices. Okay. So let's talk about this. Price, quantity of gas, price of gas. Oh, not gas. And this is gas market, gas, petrol market. All right. I don't know. Joe Biden, he comes out and say, at midnight, I'm going to make the price of gasoline $600 a gallon. Okay, so we expect gas prices to go up at midnight or in the future. What happens today? Everybody and their grandmother goes out with barrels to the gas station and start buying gas today. The demand would increase. Okay. So if we expect price to increase in future, demand today increases. We expect the price to decrease in future, demand today will fall, right? We expect to price, let's say Joe Biden says price of gasoline is going to be 10 cents at midnight, and no one's going to buy gas today. Yeah, we just hold off. Wait till midnight, boom, we start buying gas. All right, so that's expectations. Hopefully this makes sense. And let's do the last one, change in the number of buyers. Change in the number of buyers leads to a change in demand. Remember, we drew this demand curve holding even the number of buyers fixed in stone. How many buyers are there in this marketplace? Remember the first one I drew? Bob and Larry, only had two. Okay. So if Bob died, what happens to demand? It should fall in the marketplace. Okay. Same thing. So we drew this assuming, I don't know, let's say the market for pizza. Here's the price of pizza, quantity of pizza. And we drew this demand curve, assuming a certain number of people living in this city or country or whatever. Okay. And then, I don't know, we had an increase in immigration. Okay. Assuming they eat pizza, demand curve shifts to the right. For any price, we have more people. So more pizza is wanted. For any price, we have more people. So more pizza is wanted. Well, the opposite day is true. Okay. It's price of pizza, quantity of pizza, market for pizza is the demand. Okay. Ebola hits. Okay. So we have Ebola hits and we have decrease in people, right? Everybody becomes zombies, whatever. Okay. Then what happens? Demand falls. We have less people. So for any given price, less are being wanted. Okay. We finished that. We went over everything, at least in the book and in my notes, that can shift demand to the right or to the left, or increase demand or decrease demand. Those are the only things I'm going to test you on. Okay. The next we're going to do is, now we're finished with demand, we're going to talk about supply. All right, let's talk about supply. Supply. And this is basically opposite day for demand. Hopefully it's a bit easier. All right, supply is shorthand for supply curve. Quantity supply is the amount of a good or service sellers are willing and able to sell at a specific price on a specific supply curve. That's the original official definition. Okay, basically a point on the supply curve. That's quantity supply. Law of supply, all else held equal, when the price of a good increases, you want to sell more stuff. So what does all this mean? It's something we learned in the previous chapters when we built the supply curve. Here's quantity of pizza, price of pizza. This is the supply of pizza, or maybe you could think of that as the market for pizza, but we're only drawing the supply. Here's the supply curve. The law of supply basically says the supply curve is upward sloping. As the price of pizza goes up, Domino's wants to sell more pizza. The price of pizza goes up from $2 a slice to $30 a slice. Papa John's wants to sell more pizza. Hopefully that makes sense, okay? Now, with all that said, okay, point here, A, as this P star. This right here, QPS, this is quantity supplied, okay? For any given price, we have the amount that is sold or trying to be sold by the sellers. That's quantity supply. It's just right here, how much, a point on a supply curve, and it indicates how much people want to sell given a price. If we had another supply curve at this given price, we could see point B, and this is quantity, another example of quantity supplied, and we'll call this quantity supply prime, okay? This could be, I don't know, 100 slices, and this could be 150 slices. Quantity supplied is basically, you could think of it as a point on the supply curve, and it just indicates how much people want to sell at a given price. Like demand, supply, okay, has a formula if it's a line. We're not getting into nonlinear supply curves. That can happen. We could have fancy nonlinear supply curves, but we're only going to learn the formula for a linear supply curve. Here's the linear supply curve. And here's a price. It's just supply curve shows you the relationship between price and quantity supplied, where M is equal to slope. Okay, and this M is obviously different from the other M. Okay, that's just the slope. And B is the y-intercept. Okay, and the y-intercept is likely different than the demand curve. Okay, so you have a number here, you have a number here, and it just shows you the linear relationship between price, y-axis, this is the y-axis variable, and quantity supplied, which is the x-axis variable. M shows you how the y-axis variable changes when the x-axis variable changes by 1 unit. That's the slope. Remember, that's rise over run. And B is the y-intercept. Okay. I'm going to clear this. We learned about individual supply and using that to create market supply. I'll do that real quickly because we did it with demand. It's not any different. Here's Papa John's. Here's Domino's. You add them together, and let's suppose that there's only 2 sellers in this marketplace, and we have the market. There's a price for pizza, quantity for Papa John's, price for pizza, quantity for Domino's, price for pizza, and then big Q for the market. Papa John's, they did one thing, adopted a specific pizza oven and specific recipe. So this, oh Jesus. Oh Jesus. So they have this supply curve. Domino's did something else, so they have this supply curve. And in order for us to get the market supply, we just go across, see how much each will sell. Okay, let's not go that far up because this supply curve, you know what? I'm going to redraw this one because it's too slow. Let's redraw that one because it will be something like that. All right. So at some price up here, I don't know, $15 a slice. Papa John's wants to sell 100 slices, $15 a slice. Domino's, less than 50. I don't know, it's 100. I don't know, it's like 60. So $15 a slice, we have 160 because 100 plus 60. We have point A. We do another one down here at $10 a slice. Papa John wants to sell 75 slices. Domino's wants to sell, here's 50, I don't know, 30 maybe? It looks like about 30. And so 30 plus 75, so 85, 95, 105. So maybe we're about like right here, B. And we could do that for another price like right here, another price down here, and we could get C, D, connect these dots, and we get the market supply curve. Okay. And that's basically how the market supply curve is created. And it's also in my notes with Ben and Jerry, okay, taken from the book. All right, so let's clear this. And what we are going to do now is just like demand, we're going to talk about shifts in supply and movement along the supply curve. So movement along supply curve. Okay. So here's, I don't know, pizza market again, pizza market. And then here's the supply curve for pizza. Here's price of pizza, quantity of pizza. Remember, this supply curve is drawn holding all else fixed in stone. The technology used, the hourly wage rate of sellers, all of that stuff, the number of sellers in the market is fixed in stone, and we have the supply curve. Okay. And when we're at point A, I don't know, here's the price of pizza, here's quantity supplied of pizza. Let's say it's $5 a slice. People want to sell 100 slices. And let's say for whatever reason, we know the price of pizza went up $7 a slice. Then we could figure out from the supply curve, we move along the supply curve, we get to point B, and we could figure out the new amount that is being sold, 150 slices. Okay. When one of the two variables changes, either price or quantity, we could figure out the other variable in this picture using the supply curve graph or the supply curve formula. Okay. Just plug in the new P and then you get the new QS, or the new QS, figure out the new P, etc., etc. So now what we're going to do after we talked about the movement along is we're going to talk about the shift in supply curve. Specifically, we have quantity of pizza, price of pizza. Here's the supply curve for pizza. When something we assume to be fixed changes, it could potentially shift the supply curve. It can cause supply to quote unquote increase for a given price. They want to sell more, or the opposite day, it could cause the supply curve to decrease. For a given price, you want to sell less. Okay, let's talk about these thingies that can shift the supply curve by increasing or decreasing supply. And these are the only thingies that I'm going to test you on. Okay. Okay, so variables that can change supply curve. And the first one is input price changes. If the price of tomatoes increases, what happens is supply decreases. You think about it this way. Tomato market, and this is pizza market. Here's price of tomatoes, quantity of tomatoes, price of pizza, quantity of pizza. Pizza Hut is a consumer of tomatoes, so that they have a demand curve. Okay, the pizza industry are consumers of tomatoes, so they have a demand curve. And they're a seller of pizza, so we have a supply curve. So let's say we're at point A, and this is the price of tomatoes. And given this price, they're buying this many tomatoes. And given that, we are able to draw this supply curve. Price of tomatoes went up to PT double star. I don't know if there's a tomato bug that eats all the tomatoes. Then the amount of tomatoes being bought by Pizza Hut falls. Okay. All right. So you could think about it this way. Let's suppose Pizza Hut wants to sell this many pizzas. The price of tomatoes went up from $3 to $4. Then what they want to do is increase the supply curve, shift it up by the $1 plus $1. And they don't care where they are selling. They're going to shift it up by $1. And they're trying to shift this increase in the price onto the consumers. Now, will that happen? We're going to see generally not, but that's what they want to do. So that's one way of looking at why this makes sense. Another way of looking at this is given a specific price that I'm going to charge for pizza. Okay. Because tomato prices go up, we buy less tomatoes. I'm going to make less pizza. Okay. So there's two ways of looking at it. One way of looking at this, whichever way that makes sense to you, you use, is as the price of tomatoes goes up, you could think of it as Pizza Hut trying to charge more for the pizza, pushing that $1 increase in tomato price onto the consumer by shifting the supply curve, quote unquote, up or decreasing. That's a decrease in supply. Or for a given price, they're selling less pizza. Okay. So again, when the price of tomatoes go up, supply of pizza falls. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on to the next one. And here is technology advancements. Increase in technology. All right. When we have an increase in technology, that causes the supply to increase. Okay. And the way I look at it is this: a company like Toyota, some large company, or even small one, a company will not adopt a new technology unless it's beneficial. And there's two ways of thinking, at least the way I look at it, as being beneficial. One, it increases quantity, okay, it's per hour or per unit of worker, okay? So increases the productivity of workers. Maybe you don't have to think about it this complexly. You adopt a new technology because it makes you make pizza faster. Or it decreases costs. Maybe the technology reduces electricity costs because it's more efficient. Or it does both. An increase in technology, a company like, a big company, not or a small company, they're not going to adopt it unless it's beneficial. Okay. An increase in quantity will make you, or decrease in cost, both of these, or both, will lead to an increase in supply. So let's look at this. Here's price of pizza. Here's quantity of pizza. Here's the supply curve for pizza. This is the market for pizza. Okay. For a given price, if the supply curve shifts outward, you can produce more. Another way of looking at this, for a given quantity, okay, for a given quantity, price falls. Wait a minute. We said costs fall, not price. Now I'm showing you that for a given quantity, price falls. Why? We're in perfectly competitive world, perfect competition. Everybody can adopt the same technology. There's no hidden secret recipes that's a different world. In this world, everybody can adopt the new technology. When you adopt the new technology, maybe in the beginning, you could get people by your costs fall, and you could charge the same price. But eventually, everybody's going to adopt this new technology. And as everybody's costs fall and people are making killer profit, someone's going to start undercutting somebody else. And that's going to cause a price war. As costs fall, prices will eventually fall. Okay? Because each producer is greedy and they want to try to capture more of the market, and they start undercutting each other. And the prices will fall. Okay? Think of the classic one, anything. LCD TVs. 20 years ago or so, when the LCD TVs first came out, 46-inch, thicker, a very thick one, brand new LCD were like over $2,000. Now, 46-inch is like $400 or $500 at Walmart, maybe less, and that's the thin ones. You know, as technology improved, prices fell. Okay, let's move to the next item. Expectations about the future. Okay. And specifically about future prices. That's all I'm going to test you on. Okay. If we expect price to increase in future, supply today will fall. And that should make sense. Let's go back to the Joe Biden example. Biden says, at midnight, price of gasoline will be $1,000 a gallon. What would you do if you owned a gas station? Well, between now and midnight, you probably shut down. When people come to your gas station, sorry, no gas. I'm sorry, we ran out of gas. You just shut down. At midnight, you reopen up again, $1,000 a gallon. Okay. If we expect price to increase in the future, supply today will fall. Opposite day is true. Expect price to fall in future. Supply today increases. Okay, let's do the last one. Okay, the last one here. And this is change in the number of sellers. Change in the number of sellers. This is pound sign or number sign. Number of sellers. If the number of sellers increase, supply increases. Number of sellers decrease, supply decreases. Hopefully that makes sense. Here's the supply curve. Here's price of pizza, quantity of pizza. This is the market for pizza. Well, if the number of sellers increase, we have more sellers of pizza for a given price. Supply curve shifts to the right. We're selling more pizza. If half these sellers run away and they don't want to sell pizza anymore, supply declines. Okay. So again, these are only things, and I'm done with the supply section and what can shift supply. These are the only things that I'm going to talk about or test you guys about. In the notes, it gives you a summary of the 4 things we talked about: input price changes, technology changes, expectations, and the number of sellers. Okay. Now what we're going to do is talk about equilibrium. This is actually one of the hardest things that we learn in graduate school. It's market equilibrium. And you're going to be like, well, this looks easy. It is. But solving for existence of equilibrium is really hard in grad school. Equilibrium or market equilibrium, we're putting demand and supply together. It's a situation in which the market price has reached a certain level where quantity supplied, or however much that sellers want to sell, exactly equals quantity demanded. how much people want to buy. This is where the supply curve and the demand curve intersects. The equilibrium price is that price that we just talked about. This is what's called, quote unquote, the market clearing price. Okay, this should not be a colon, it should be a quote. Equilibrium quantity is the quantity at equilibrium price. All right, so let's draw this. It's quantity of pizza, price of pizza. This is the market for pizza, or pizza market. This is the demand curve. This is the supply curve. Where they hit right here, this is equilibrium. EQ for equilibrium. PP star, that's the price, the unit price. And that's the price that sets quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. I don't know, let's say it's $5 a slice, and it's at 100 slices. And that's what we call Q star. The amount people want to buy, quantity demanded, equals the amount Domino's and Papa John's wants to sell, quantity supplied. That is equal to Q star, or 100. Okay, this is market equilibrium. This is graphically what it looks like. And we could also solve for this mathematically. Okay, so let's solve for this mathematically. We have demand. The demand curve was P price of pizza equals M. Let's put D for demand times Q D P for pizza plus B D for demand. And remember, this was negative, okay? And we also have, I'll put P D for demand, okay? And we have S. This is PSP, price pizza supply, is equal to MS QSP plus BS. PDP, PSP, MD, MS. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Let me clear this. I made a mistake. Okay. Sorry. Let's go back. Redo this. Okay. MD. Oh, sorry. MD, MS, BD, BS are all numbers. They're all going to be positive numbers from that are greater than 0, less than infinity. Okay, that could be infinity, but we'll just, for simplicity, let's make them positive. There's just going to be positive numbers. Okay, so I'm going to solve for this generically and then solve for it using a number. Okay, in equilibrium, what we have is P star is equal to PPD, which is equal to PSP. Okay, so I'm going to plug this into here and into here. And what we also have in equilibrium, just in right here, equilibrium, QD for pizza, quantity demanded pizza, equals quantity supplied of pizza, equal to quantity star. It's the star of pizza. And I'm going to plug that into here. And then when we rewrite the demand in equilibrium, we have P star equals to negative MD Q star price plus BD. And we also have for the supply, P star P is equal to MS Q star P plus BS. It's PS. Huh? All right. So what we can do is set them equal to each other. Then we have negative MD Q star P plus BD, that's a D, is equal to MS Q star P plus BS. And we're going to solve for Q star. Okay, one of the unknowns is Q star. The other known is price. So I'm going to erase this. I'll have space. Okay. So what I'm going to do is put this dude on this side of the equation and this dude on this side of the equation, and we have the following: minus BS plus BD is equal to MSQ star P plus MDQ star P. We have minus BS plus BD is equal to Q star P, MS plus MD. So then the Q star P is equal to BD minus BS. I just flipped them. MS plus MD. Okay. Well, what is the price? We just plug this into either the demand or supply curve to figure out the price. P star P is equal to one of these two, I'm sorry, right here. Okay. Minus MD times BD minus BS over MS plus MD. Okay. Because I plugged it into this one here, plus BD. And I'm not going to reduce this. I'm not going to reduce this. I don't care. Why? Because they're just all numbers. These things are all numbers. So this will be like 10 and this will be like 14. So let's solve this once, again, using an example with numbers. And you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is stupid. All right, let's do this. It might look intimidating now, but it's really easy. Let's do this. Okay. All right, so let's solve for this. So what do I have to give you? The demand, okay? And it's going to be PD is equal to minus 4 QD. Let's say this is pizza, whatever, it doesn't matter. Pizza plus 100. So I have to give you M and I have to give you B. The other thing is for supply. Price supply pizza is equal to, and this is a positive number, let's say 6 QSP plus 2. Okay. So I have to give you all of this. And now you could solve for this. What we have to remember is in equilibrium, PD P is equal to PSP is equal to P star P, and QDP is equal to quantity supplied of pizza is equal to quantity star. Okay. So we put these things in here. We have P star P is equal to minus 4 Q star P plus 100. P star P is equal to 6 Q star P plus 2. And now we could set these two equations equal, and we get minus 4 Q star P plus 100 is equal to 6 Q star P plus 2. Okay. And then from here, I'm going to put this dude on this side and this dude on this side. So we have 100 plus negative 2, that's a minus 2, equal to 6Q P star plus 4Q P star. So it's what is that? 98 is equal to 10Q P star. So the quantity of pizza that is being eaten is 98 over 10, which is 5. I wish I could do this. I'm not as smart as most people. So we're just going to use fancy Excel. Okay, so I have 49/5 and equal to 49 divided by 5. And that is what I have is 9.8. Okay. Circle your answers because don't make me find Waldo. All right. So if we know that's how many pizzas people are going to eat and Domino's is going to sell, let's find the price, the equilibrium price. We plug 9.8 into one of these two equations. I'll just plug it into the bottom one. P star P is equal to 6 times, and I'll use the fraction, 49/5 plus 2. P star P is equal to, I should have not used the fractions. Equal to 6 times 49 divided by 5. Okay. And then that is 58.8 plus 2. So P star P is 58, 59, 60.8. Okay. So that's your answers. That's how you solve for this equilibrium. Price and equilibrium quantity. Given the demand curve looks like this, given the supply curve looks like this, the equilibrium price of pizza is $60.80 a slice, and people are going to buy and sell almost 10 slices, 9.8 slices. Okay. All right, let's clear this. And now what we're going to talk about is the law of supply and demand. Okay, what is the law of supply and demand? Okay. Law of supply and demand. The law of supply and demand says the following. Oops. The price of any good adjusts to bring quantity supplied and the quantity demand for the good into balance. What that means is that most markets, the supply and shortages are temporary. Okay. So if we have a situation where we're not quote unquote into balance, the price will change and we will get eventually to where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. Okay. So let's study this. Let's study this right now. Okay, we're going to study the surplus situation. There's quantity of pizza. This is the pizza market. Here's price of pizza. Here's demand for pizza. Here's supply for pizza. And this would be happy-go-lucky equilibrium A, where the price of pizza is right there, and quantity being bought and sold is here, I don't know, 100 slices, and this is $5 a slice. But for whatever reason, let's say in the city, it's not like this. For whatever reason, the price is right here at $9 a slice. At $9 a slice of pizza, no one, no grandmother, nobody who's going to want to buy pizza. Quantity demanded is all the way down here. Instead of 100, it's like 30. But everybody and their grandmother wants to sell pizza. Quantity supplied is all the way out here. Is 100, I don't know, 130. Okay? No, it looks more than 130. Let's make this 150. Okay? So right now, quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. 150, 70. The difference is 80. This 80 is equal to what we call a surplus of pizza in this case. We have a surplus. We have excess supply. We have something called excess supply. Okay, surplus. You could think about it this way. It's like every company, every pizza store is making, I don't know, 80 extra pizzas every day. And then they just toss it. Like, oh man, price is $9 a slice. So everybody and their grandmother are making 150 slices. Only 70 are being sold. So 80 are being thrown away. All right. Eventually, we're going to get out of this rut or this situation. How? I don't know. Let's just think about this. We're going to eventually have one smart manager, whatever, Papa John's manager. He's going to look at this and he's like, man, every day we're throwing away 80 slices of pizza. This is a joke. And he'll say, you know what? We're about to close. We're going to toss these 80 slices. Screw this. Let's have a sale. Let's sell it for $8. When one of these managers thinks about this, of reducing prices to sell off some of their pizza, it starts a price war. When this pizza seller, right at the end of the day, tries to sell for $8, okay? When he lowers the price, some people decide to come in. Some consumer sees that he's having a sale at the last minute. And what happens? Some consumer starts coming in. So you starting having some, when the price drops from 9 to 8, some people who didn't want to buy pizza starts buying pizza. So we're like moving down the supply demand curve, and we have increase in quantity demanded. Well, guess what? When he started this price war and he started selling pizza at $8 and he saw people started buying more pizza, maybe he decides, or someone else, maybe Domino's catches on, or somebody or Pizza Hut, one of them catches on, says, screw this, why sell for $9? We saw Bob over there at Papa John's, he got more customers at $8. Well, guess what? Price war happened and price dropped to $8. And then some sellers, they realize when the price dropped to $8, they can't sell pizza anymore. So they get out of the marketplace. This continues. Price drops to $7. More people enter, more sellers exit. We keep going at this. More consumers enter, more sellers exit. And we continue until we hit point A, or equilibrium, where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. When they equal, there's no more incentives to lower the prices anymore. The amount being sold exactly equals the amount being bought. The excess supply or surplus you see disappears. Remember, that's this horizontal gap. It shrank down to 0. All right, now let's talk about opposite day. We're on the shortages. Quantity of pizza, price of pizza, pizza market. Here's the demand for pizza. Here's the supply for pizza. This is happy-go-lucky equilibrium. P star, Q star, pizza, I know, 100 slices, $5 each. Okay. But we're not there for some reason. We are, I don't know. For some reason, we're down here. And the price of pizza is like 50 cents a slice. In this case, everybody and their grandmother wants to buy pizza. Okay, here's quantity demanded. I don't know, it's 200 slices. No one wants to sell pizza. Pizza Hut, everybody wants to like get out of pizza market. Only hardcore sellers are selling it. And they're selling only like 50 slices. We see quantity demanded of pizza is 200. and this is greater than quantity supplied of pizza at 50. And the difference between 250, 150, this is excess demand or shortage. We have a shortage in the market. We have an excess demand or shortage in the marketplace. And it is this difference right here of 150 shortage. Okay, we have the shortage. So what's going to happen? The shortage will eventually disappear because the price will adjust. So how does this happen? Okay, let's go through this. Whatever. Let's say we're all like 200 of us every day lining up for pizza. There's only 50 slices of pizza. 150 of us don't get pizza. Every day we all line up. Only 50 of us gets pizza. 150 of us do not. One of us gets pissed off and tired at the end of whatever days and goes to the march to the front of the line, goes like, screw this, man. You know what? Screw 50 cents. Give me a slice of pizza, I'll pay 75 cents. Give me a slice, let me walk away. I'm tired of waiting this time. What this customer did was start a price war. When he bid up the price of pizza from 50 cents to 75, someone else was like, no, 80 cents. No, 85, 90. Caused a price war. And when this price is starting to be bid up, some consumers who are more than happy to buy pizza at 50 cents a slice, not so happy to buy pizza at 80, 90 cents a slice. They leave the line. And guess what? Sellers, when they hear about the prices going up, more pizza sellers enter. You could see the amount of sellers they enter causing quantity supplied go up and quantity demand is falling. And eventually we meet again at point A, the equilibrium, at $5 a slice, and where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded at Q star at 100 slices pizza. There's no more excess demand. It gets killed off. The shortage gets killed off at 0. Okay. That's how the law of supply and demand is created, where the prices adjust such that the shortage and surpluses disappear. They're generally temporary. All right, the next thing we're going to do is comparative statics. Okay. Comparative statics, usually I'm going to do using graphically, though I could, we could do it mathematically, but graphically. And this is how, what is comparative static? Change an assumption and see what unfolds. Remember I taught you about the things that could shift the supply curve or things that could shift the demand curve. We're going to change one or two of those thingies and see what happens to the market. And this is what I think is the best way of analyzing this. I'm sure there's other ways that are better, but this is the way I thought of. First, step one, draw the initial market equilibrium. Draw the baseline case of supply and demand and the initial equilibrium without the story I tell you. Then, step two, the story I tell you, does that affect supply curve, demand curve, or maybe both curves? See how it affects it. Does it shift to the left, shift to the right? Which curve shift to the left, which curve shifts to the right? That's step 2 and step 3. Okay. After you shifted the supply and demand curve, then figure out, use the supply and demand model and figure out and compare and contrast the initial equilibrium to the new equilibrium and see how it happened to equilibrium price and quantity. Did the equilibrium price and quantity go up or down? Did it stay the same? That's the goal. All right, so let's do this. Okay. So let's do the first story example. Okay, let's do two, but let's do an example. Monkeys eat bananas. Bananas. What happens to banana split market? So a bunch of monkeys run around and ate a bunch of bananas, cause a banana shortage. What happens to the banana split market? All right, let's do this. So here's the BS market, banana split market. Price of BS, quantity of BS. Here's the demand for BS. Here's the supply for BS. Here's happy-go-lucky equilibrium. This is the initial equilibrium before the monkeys invade. Here's the price of BS star. Here's the quantity of BS star. Okay. So when the monkeys, they ate a bunch of bananas, it causes the price of bananas to increase, right? Which causes the supply, that's an input, supply for banana splits to decrease. Okay. The banana split supply curve decreases like this. This is the demand curve. We find a new equilibrium right here at point B. Here's quantity double star of banana split, or BS, price of BS double star. When the price of bananas increase, what we see is that the price of banana splits, it increased, and quantity consumed and bought and sold of banana splits to fall. And that's basically what I want to see, is this right here and this picture. If I ask you to do this graphically, this is basically what I want to see. All right, let's do another one. This is a little bit more complicated. Let's say Biden increase price of gas in future. What happens today for gas market? Okay. All right, so before Biden gets do this weird stuff, we're gonna say price, quantity of gas, price of gas. This is the gas market. There's demand for gas. Here's the supply for gas. We're in a happy-go market equilibrium. There's P star, Q star for gas. When Biden decides to increase the price of gas in the future, it affects decisions today. What we learned is that this will cause supply today to fall, but demand today to increase. Remember, if we know the price of gas is going to be $1 million a gallon at midnight, no one and their grandmother is going to sell gasoline. All Chevrons and all Shell stations are going to shut down. So supply will fall. But everybody and their grandmother wants to buy gasoline. So we're all going to rush to the gas station. So demand will increase. All right, so one thing we know is demand increases, but supply falls. Okay, so supply falls, demand increases. We're at a new equilibrium B. We have Q double star G, P double star G. Now what do we see here? We see the price increase and quantity increase. Okay, That's possible. Some of you guys might have drawn it differently. Okay. Okay. Oh, I got the magic of computing. Some of you guys might have said the following. Well, you know what? I think the supply effect is massive. And the demand effect is not that massive. Maybe you draw it like this. And now what do we see? Price goes up, but amount being bought and sold falling. So we could see two effects so far. For price, it goes up, but the amount being bought and sold could have either increased or could have decreased, depending on the relative impact on supply versus demand. If the relative impact on demand was greater than supply, quantity increased. If the relative impact on supply is greater than demand, quantity decreased. And then you got the last scenario. Where you could say, okay, I think the impact is equal. So you have supply falling, demand increasing, and you're about right there. We see price increase, but quantity staying the same. So in certain scenarios like this, we can have multiple different answers. And if I'm not very specific on whether it impacted supply more or demand more, all three answers are correct. So in this scenario, when Biden increased the price of gas in the future, we know that the price increased, but for quantity, it's ambiguous. We don't know. It could go up, it could go down, or it could stay the same. Okay. This concludes my lecture on this chapter of supply and demand. Have a good day.